In 1889, a pizza maker in Naples allegedly baked a pie for a queen, and that one pizza became the most famous food story in the world. It's the story printed on menus, tattooed on pizza boxes, repeated in 1,000 videos. Almost none of it is true. The letter that proves it happened has mismatched seals and handwriting that doesn't add up, and no newspaper from 1889 ever mentioned the visit at all. So if a king and queen didn't invent pizza, who did? The real answer runs through 3,000 years of history, a food once considered garbage, a forgotten immigrant erased from the record, and a war that changed what the entire world eats for dinner. Bread before pizza. Start with the obvious question. Isn't pizza just bread with stuff on it? Sort of, and humans have been doing that for a very long time. The Egyptians baked flatbreads over 4,000 years ago. The Greeks made a version called plekus, topped with herbs, garlic, and onion. The Romans had panis focaccius, a flat loaf baked near the hearth, the ancestor of what we now call focaccia. None of these people would have recognized a modern pizza. There was no tomato sauce, no mozzarella, none of the toppings that make pizza pizza. What they had was the idea: bread as a plate, something you could cook fast, hold in your hand, and eat while working. That idea shows up again and again across cultures with almost no contact with each other. Flatbread with toppings isn't really an invention. It's closer to a solution that humans kept arriving at on their own because it solves the same problem every time. How do you eat something hot and filling without owning a kitchen? That idea eventually landed in one particular city that would turn it into something else entirely. Naples. The food nobody wanted. Here's the part that surprises most people. Pizza wasn't created for anyone important. It was created because poor people in Naples needed to eat cheaply and quickly. By the 1500s and 1600s, Naples was one of the most crowded cities in Europe, packed with dockworkers, laborers, and the urban poor who had almost no kitchen space and even less time. Street vendors sold flatbreads topped with whatever was cheap: lard, garlic, cheese, herbs. It was fast, it was hot, and it cost almost nothing. Vendors balanced tinned copper stoves on their heads, keeping the pies warm as they walked the streets, calling out to dockworkers and factory hands, an early low-tech version of the delivery box. Wealthy Neapolitans looked down on it. For a long time, pizza was food you ate standing up, not food served at a table. Then the tomato arrived from the Americas, and everything changed. Europeans were terrified of it at first. As a member of the nightshade family, wealthy households assumed it was poisonous and called it the poison apple. The poor of Naples had less to lose, so they put it on their flatbreads anyway. By the 1700s, tomato-topped pizza was a fixture of Neapolitan street food decades before the upper classes would admit to liking it. So the truth is this: pizza wasn't invented in a palace kitchen. It was invented by people the palace didn't notice, using an ingredient the palace was scared of: the queen, the legend, and the lie. Now, let's go back to that 1889 story because it's too good not to unpack. The legend says pizzaiolo Raffaele Esposito was summoned to the royal residence to cook for King Umberto I and Queen Margherita, who wanted to try the street dish everyone in Naples kept talking about. He baked 3 pizzas. The queen loved the one topped with tomato, mozzarella, and basil best, and Esposito named it after her, Pizza Margherita, now sold in nearly every country on earth. It's a great story. It's also, according to historians who've dug into it, almost certainly fabricated. Food historian Zachary Nowak calls it fake lore, a folktale invented after the fact to add prestige to a business. A tomato mozzarella basil pizza was already being made in Naples nearly a century before Esposito supposedly invented it. No newspaper or royal record from 1889 mentions the visit, and the one piece of physical proof, a thank you letter from the palace, is inconsistent enough that experts believe it was created decades later specifically to support the myth. None of this means Esposito didn't exist. He was a real pizza maker in Naples. But the Queen's story was most likely built to sell pizza, not to record history, and it worked. Think about why it spread so easily. A royal seal of approval was a much better sales pitch than poor people in Naples have been eating this for 100 years. And it gave one specific pizzeria a marketing edge over every competitor on the block. The legend didn't need to be true. It just needed to be repeatable, and by the time anyone checked the paperwork, it was already on every menu in town. The most famous pizza origin story on the planet might be marketing. The man who brought pizza to America and got erased from it. If pizza's Italian origin story is murkier than the legend, its American origin story might be even messier. For decades, the official history credited pizza in America to Gennaro Lombardi, an Italian immigrant who opened a grocery store on Spring Street in New York and started selling tomato pies wrapped in paper to factory workers at lunchtime around 1905. Lombardi's is still open today and still calls itself America's first pizzeria. But research from 2019 complicates that story. Immigration records show Lombardi didn't arrive in the U.S. until 1904, listed on the ship's manifest as a teenage laborer, not a business owner. If he was working at that pizzeria in its early years, he was likely an employee, not the founder. So who actually built it? Historians point to a largely forgotten figure named Filippo Milone, an Italian immigrant believed to have opened not one, but several of New York's earliest pizzerias, including the buildings that became Lombardi's and the legendary John's of Bleecker Street. Milone treated pizzerias almost like a franchise model before that word existed. Open a shop, get it running, sell it, start another a few blocks away. That's exactly why his name faded. The businesses kept his customers, his ovens, and his recipes. None of them kept his name over the door. The war that made pizza global. For decades after Lombardi's opened, pizza mostly stayed inside Italian immigrant neighborhoods in New York, Chicago, and Boston, feeding recent arrivals who missed the taste of home. Most Americans outside those communities had never tasted it. Then World War II happened, and pizza's fortunes changed almost overnight. Around 1943, roughly 150,000 American and British troops were stationed in southern Italy, and off-duty, they ate what the locals ate, including pizza, and many of them loved it. When those soldiers shipped home after the war, they brought the craving with them. The proof is almost comically specific. Between 1948 and 1956, oregano sales in the United States jumped by more than 5,000%, driven almost entirely by home cooks trying to recreate the pizza soldiers couldn't stop talking about. Technology caught up fast. In 1945, a GI named Ira Nevin came home from Italy and joined his family's oven manufacturing business, where he helped develop the first gas-fired ceramic deck pizza oven, a design that could be mass-produced, unlike the wood and brick ovens pizzerias had relied on for generations. Opening a pizzeria no longer required a mason. It required a gas line. By the late 1950s, pizza wasn't just an immigrant food anymore, it was becoming an American industry. Pizza Hut opened in Wichita, Kansas in 1958, started by two brothers who borrowed $600 from their mother. Little Caesars followed a year later, and Domino's the year after. What had been a specific dish from a specific city in Italy was turned into a business model, standardized, franchised, and shipped to strip malls nationwide. From there, the spread only accelerated. Frozen pizza brought it into grocery stores. Delivery drivers brought it straight to the door. American chains eventually carried it overseas, so a food originally built by poor Neapolitans to feed dock workers came back around the world wearing a paper hat and a company logo. Within a generation, pizza went from a food most Americans had never heard of to one of the most popular meals on the planet. So who invented pizza? Not a king, not a queen, not one name you can point to. Poor dock workers in Naples who turned a poisonous fruit into dinner. Immigrants whose names got left out of the story. Soldiers who missed a meal from a war zone. A family that used to build stoves. The margarita legend survives because it flatters everyone involved. The real story survives in oregano sales, immigration records, and a forgotten man named Milone. One is a fairy tale, the other is history.